Welcome to another episode of Inspirational Women. This week, I'm chatting with Susan Jones. I had the pleasure of meeting Susan when I lived in California. She was the temporary chief of police in Cloverdale when I moved there. Susan has done it all. She was in the Air Force and became a medical technician in the Air Force. She's repaired musical instruments. She began policing as a deputy sheriff in California. And she has really been a trailblazer in the police department for women and for the LGBT community. She has sued her and some of her colleagues, women colleagues, sued to gain equality in terms of promotions for women in policing. And she's been on city council, she's been mayor, Susan has just done it all, and I hope you're really going to enjoy this episode. Thank you for watching. Welcome to Inspirational Women. Please subscribe to this channel and remember to click the bell to be informed of all new episodes. Today, joining me is Susan Jones, retired chief of police from Healdsburg, and much more, as we're going to learn. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you.
Susan, where did you begin life? Was it in California or elsewhere?
Yeah, I was pretty much in California. I was born in Akron, Ohio, but my parents moved out here before I was a year old.
Oh, so you really don't know anywhere other than California?
Yeah, San Diego.
Nice area.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that you served in the Air Force when you were younger.
Right.
What prompted you to do that? And what did you do? What was your role?
Well, I was at the time we were living in Bakersfield, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I was 17 years old. I wanted to do everything. I wanted to teach. I wanted to work in medicine. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to do all kinds of things. I went down to military recruitment and chose the Air Force because they had more options. And we joke around and say it's the other military because it's more like not that hardcore marching and all that military. It's more cerebral. And I became a medical service tech, which is like a licensed vocational nurse.
Really?
Yeah. And so to see what the medical field was all about and if it's something I wanted to pursue when I got out.
So as your role as a medical technician, were you practicing in the military? Were you attending to injured people?
Yes, I was stationed in San Bernardino, and I worked between Norton and March Air Force Base. And I helped administer physical exams. I worked in the hospital. I worked on the cardiac care unit, and I also worked in the terminally ill ward. I got some good experience.
You sure did, which would carry forward into your policing career, wouldn't it? And from the Air Force, did you go directly into policing or did you have a break? How did you decide?
Yeah, I had a little bit of a break. I went back to Bakersfield because my mom lived there. Kind of got my feet back on the ground, started working with just part-time with a few doctors when they would do mobile health clinics. Then long story, I chanced upon this position with a musical instrument store, and I became a musical instrument repair person. And so I repair woodwinds.
Oh my gosh, that is so far removed from policing.
Totally. It was my mom had actually asked me to drop by and let them know that my brother couldn't show up for the interview because he got a job somewhere else and he didn't bother to call them. So it was on my way to where I was going, and I just popped in, and curiosity, I asked about the job, and I was looking for full-time work. So they trained me, and I did that for a couple of years. And then I got into policing by knowing a few security police from the Air Force, and it looked like a fun job. And the sheriff's office there was hiring, and so I applied, and the rest is history.
My gosh, that is some detour.
Yeah.
Now you are a deputy sheriff in Kern County. How did that? You were policing and then you became a sheriff?
No, I was being a musical instrument technician, and I applied and took the entrance exam, and I was hired for Kern County, and they sent me through the academy, and I became a deputy sheriff and worked there in Kern County for 5 years before I came up to Northern California.
And how did that happen? How did you find yourself in Concord?
I had a lot of friends leave Bakersfield. I would come up north, and I had a couple that moved to Walnut Creek, some that moved to Sacramento, and I would come up and visit. And I just fell in love with the area. It was, cooler, it was greener, the air was fresher. And so I started looking for a police department to work for, and Concord was one of them. And I applied, and they took me on.
You made a significant contribution when you were in Concord with the lawsuit.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Concord had some issues with women working there. In fact, when I was hired, I was the third woman they'd ever hired. As I progressed through my career, I think it was around 1996. There were, at that time, 16 of us. And what we were finding is every time we would put in for a specialized assignment, we all got turned down. They never moved women into specialized assignments or promoted us. And we had the same background, we had the same training, and we just got tired of it. So we tried to resolve it within the city itself by going to the city manager and personnel director and trying to get some changes made, but it didn't happen. And so we had to seek outside counsel. 8 of us sued. And about a year and a half later, the lawsuit settled, and they held promotional exams. And I was one of the lieutenants. I was one of the sergeants who got promoted to lieutenant. And then other women were brought up also in the ranks, promoted to sergeant and so forth. I
was reading somewhere, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but that at one time the women officers were wearing skirts and carrying their guns in their purses.
Yeah, that was back in the Kern County days. That was in 1979. And women just weren't quite recognized as equals to the men. They had us wear skirts, carry big black purses, and we couldn't work patrol. We couldn't work the street. They would allow us to do investigative work and work in the jail, but that was it. They were Kern County went under a court decree to make it fair for both men and women.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we've come a long way, but definitely not far enough.
Yeah. And there's been some slippage too, slipping backwards.
You bet.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, did women police officers have to take the same, for lack of a better word, athletic type training, combat and all the rest of it?
Yeah, there's really no combat training, but we had to prove that we were able to pass the physical requirements of the job.
And then from Concord, well, you filed suit, that's right. And then did you go immediately to, were you promoted immediately to chief of police in Healdsburg or elsewhere?
No, I was after the lawsuit settled, and I took the new lieutenant's exam, which was the 4th one I had taken, by the way. The first 3, I came out number 1, but I wasn't promoted because I wasn't, as the chief told me, I needed to be more like the guys. And I asked him, what does that mean?
Yes.
And he couldn't really explain it. And then what he did is he said, well, I don't have any support from my captains. They don't want you to rise to the position of lieutenant. And I said, you're the chief. So you kind of set the tone here.
Yes.
Anyway, this new company came in, unrelated, no Concord PD people on the testing process, which was good because we got a fresh look. And so I was promoted. I was one of 4 lieutenants promoted. And I worked as a lieutenant for about 2 years. Yeah, I was promoted in 98 till about the year 2000. And then I saw this brochure come across my desk for the city of Healdsburg. And they were looking for a police chief. And the way it was written, it looked like the place I'd want to work. They talked a lot about community policing and the small community, and
Right.
Looking for someone who wanted to be part of that process and change the department. The department at the time wasn't, the people there were not very well educated. I had one person who had a college degree, and she was the only female officer they had. The rest of the guys, got through high school, maybe a year of college, but that was it. And there were some other things. It was all white male, and we wanted to really change it to reflect the community that it served.
Now, you say in the article that I read, you said that you were initially reluctant to accept that position because of your sexuality.
Initially, well, it's kind of a funny story. The interim police chief who was there at the time, Steve Willis, I met him during the process, and we became pretty close friends. Mm-hmm. And then I also have another friend, Joe Crines, who's a police chief, and he was at the time in Sausalito. After I took the test, the interview process, everything, and was told by Chet Wystepik, who was the city manager, that he wanted to hire me. I mean, I was thrilled. Now I hung up the phone, and then I thought, oh my God, they don't know that I'm gay. From what I had heard about some small communities, that could be an issue. I told my friend Joe, I said, Joe, they don't know. And he goes, well, I've talked to Steve Willis a lot, and I mentioned Tony, your partner. And I said, well, Tony could be a man's name. So I'm a little concerned. And so he goes, oh. And so the next day, it was really cute. Chet Wystepik, the city manager, called me and said, hey, I'm looking forward to signing a contract with you and getting you on board. And oh, by the way, I heard you were gay.
Oh, by the way.
Oh, by the way. And I just paused for a minute. I go, well, yeah, is that an issue? And he said, no, it's not part of the job requirement or anything. He said, we don't care. And I said, well, could you just make sure that the council doesn't have a problem with it? Because I have job security where I am,
right,
in Concord. And I was making more money in Concord, and I had some really good benefits in Concord that I was giving up. I said, before I do that and come to Healdsburg, I'm looking at this to be my new home. I don't want to, in 6 months, get fired for some bogus reason because somebody didn't like my lifestyle.
Right.
And he said, I understand. So he talked to the council that day, called me back and said, nobody cares.
You had great support there.
Fabulous support. Yeah.
That's just wonderful. And isn't it a shame, though, that it even had to be stated?
Well, truly. And today I don't really think you have to state it, but even then, 20 years ago, it was kind of an issue. It could have been an issue.
Different times, yes. In the articles that I've read about you, they state that you've had a commitment to diversity and your approach to policing has brought communities together. How did you go about doing that?
I have to credit Concord PD actually for giving me the background in community policing. We had a chief at the time who, although had some issues with women in policing,
Right.
He brought forward community policing and how it changes the philosophy that it's not a program, but it's just how we do our business. And we have more of a preventative approach. And we were so good at it that we actually won the James Q. Wilson Award for community policing, which is a big award for law enforcement. So when I came over to Healdsburg, I mean, what it means is getting the cops out of their cars, walking parts of their beat that they can walk, bike riding, being a little innovative with how we deliver services rather than going to the same place for the same problem all the time. Let's look at what's causing the problem and solving that so we can move on. And maybe it's somebody like we had a homeless guy. Maybe it's somebody that just needs some services and nobody has tried to get them for him. So let's do that.
Yeah.
And we were able to hook him up with the services that he needed, and he was no longer an issue. And I mean, it really just goes back to Sir Robert Peel's principles of policing, where the police are the public are the police. We're just the ones that get paid to do it full time, but it's something that is incumbent upon everyone. And if we can get our communities to work with us and provide information to us, because we can't be everywhere all at once,
Right.
then we're better off together. And we can solve, crimes like daytime burglaries or nighttime car window smashes or something like that. And so that's what we were able to do. And then I changed the makeup of the department as people moved on. Like I said, when I got there, it was education level was kind of low. I had one woman out of 16 officers. When I left with 18 officers, I had 5 women, one of them African American, and I had 3 men who were Latino, whose English was their second language, and they were all members of the community. So they lived there and understood what the city needed in terms of policing. And we just had some really cool, innovative programs where people helped us out. I remember Doug Keene, who was the famous Master Chef winner, Top Chef, and he used to own Cyrus, and he's reopening it again, Cyrus 2.0. He helped catch a bad guy, and he got a community policing award at a council meeting. So we started recognizing people throughout the community.
Great idea.
Yeah, I mean, it was just great.
You're right. It would give the people of the community a sense of involvement and just commitment to their own community.
Right. And then when they don't fear the police, they're willing to come to us with information. Like one of the guys, Henry, who was going around lighting law offices on fire. And we didn't know who was doing it. A couple of his friends did, and they came and told us about it. So we were able to pick him up.
Did you have to cope with demonstrations such as we're seeing today?
Not really, no. Not
No.
to the extent that we're seeing today.
And was your department trained in domestic violence situations and
Absolutely, yes.
how to resolve those and get those people help?
Right, yes.
Well, we certainly need more of that today. I'm in the Seattle area, and policing here has been a big problem. You
It's
probably
been yeah, it has been a problem.
I just want to read something here that Senator Mike McGuire said about you. He has said wonderful things about you. And I quote, "Susan has expanded community policing programs in the community and has brought a team of police officers that are top notch. She has involved herself deeply and become part of the fabric of our community."
Oh,
That was so nice of him to do that, wasn't it?
yeah, he's a good guy. He was on the council when I was there, and really nice to work with.
And that's a good segue, because that was my next question, was that you were on the Healdsburg City Council for a while. How did you find that?
That was it. It was an interesting experience. I enjoyed it because you'd think for 9 years, I sat at every council meeting as the police chief. I listened to things that were going on and I thought I knew, for the most part, what happens in the city, but
Mhm.
not until you sit in those chairs do you really understand it.
Really? How,
Yeah,
how so?
because as a council member or as the mayor, you're involved in the entire process. I mean, there's all these closed session meetings that you go to discuss certain issues, and then tons of open session meetings. You start talking about affordable housing and water usage, and I mean, just all these things that the police really aren't involved in.
Right.
But having the police experience was really beneficial because I could look at new plans that were coming in or needs that the city had and take it from a law enforcement perspective as far as, would this help reduce crime in the area, or would this be an eyesore, if a new business wanted to come in, or would it be something that would contribute to the community in a positive way? I mean, it was interesting.
So you found that to be a positive experience.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't want to do it again, but yeah, it was a lot of work. It's
Not that,
really, that the problem is, as a police chief, if I decided to do something, I was the one who decided to do it, and I would tell my managers or our supervisors, let's go this direction.
hmm
I mean, I get buy-in and everything, but ultimately it's my decision. As a council member, there's 5 of you.
right.
And not everyone agrees with everybody. And
No.
that I've found frustrating.
I have some experience from attending the Cloverdale council meetings, and some of them could be quite contentious. My understanding then is that you retired from policing prior to accepting interim positions in Patati and Calistoga. Did you do something in between, or you just
Yeah, well,
travel?
I was on the council from 2011 through 2015, 14 through 14. And so while I was doing that, I did serve as the interim chief for Katati right after I retired, the next day. And
Oh, really?
then there was about a year break, and I went to Calistoga for about 6 months. And then I had another break, maybe a year, and I went to Cloverdale. And then I just said no more.
Really?
Time to
And
move on.
Cloverdale was a smaller town. Well, I don't know about Calistoga's pretty small too.
Yeah, Calistoga's small. Katati's actually pretty small.
Yes. In Cloverdale, how did you find the situation in Cloverdale? Was it somewhat similar to what you had experienced in a larger city, or was it different?
Similar, pretty similar in terms
Mm.
of police. The community there really do like their police.
Yes.
They have a good department, they had good people. There were some that weren't really there for the right reason, and they're not there any longer. But
hmm
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and you also had responsibility for the airport and animal control.
right.
Had you done anything like that before?
Well, I had with Healdsburg. I was managing the animal control contract in Healdsburg, so that was pretty easy. The airport, though, was a whole different ball game and really needs more oversight. I don't. That was one of the things. As an interim, you're able to come in and take a really good assessment of what the job entails, and then go to the city manager or the council and say, as I did with the airport, it's too much for a police chief. They're apples and oranges, and it really needs either a full-time manager or at least a good part-time manager for that. There
Mhm.
are things that come up at the last minute that, as a police chief, you're drawn in too many different directions for it, and there's a whole litany of federal laws and rules that have to be followed. There's all these grant programs. It was too much. So
Mhm.
they ended up hiring an airport manager.
You also are an expert witness.
Mhm.
What the heck is an expert witness?
No, it's just someone with a little more knowledge in a little area. I started working as an expert witness when I retired. Issues of police misconduct and sexual harassment. So
Oh,
I'm hired by a law firm who wants me to take a look at a complaint that's been filed and give them my recommendation.
and are you still doing that today, Susan?
Not officially, but if I'm asked, I will. Yeah.
That's a great contribution to make, too.
Hmm.
Before we conclude, I was just wondering, police training, is there any thought to expanding the training that officers get prior to moving out onto the street?
Not at this time. I know that the academy is 23 weeks long. I
Gosh.
think it's that's a long time, but I mean, look at what a police officer is tasked with. I mean,
Mm,
they have the ability to take a life,
yeah,
to take someone's freedom. I think they should be actually really well trained and very well educated. Because I
yeah,
think with education, you get a critical mind. You get a mind that's going to not just, I mean, some of these cops have this go to the freezer, get the box mentality that
mhm,
um, they don't look at the person as a person. They look at him as a dirt bag or someone that needs to go to jail.
mm.
And that's where a lot of them get in trouble,
There's so much unemployment, addiction,
right?
homelessness, all of that, which we contend with here in our local area, which obviously it's all over now because of the pandemic. It's
Pandemic, right?
just increased all that. So it is a lot for the police to contend with. I agree. But there's been a lot of talk about beefing up the training so that they know how to handle these situations better. And innocent people aren't injured
Exactly. Or killed. Yeah.
or killed.
Yeah. I know the police chief in Healdsburg has um, created a position for a social worker to be
That's
part of the staff and to come in and help deal with people who, again, need services, not necessarily law enforcement,
mm.
and can take that element off of the shoulders of police.
In your opinion, do you think that's an easier assignment for a smaller community than the larger cities, San Francisco, Seattle, Los Angeles?
Well, I think larger cities would need a whole unit of
Of
social workers, yeah, and psychologists to deal with it. But I don't know really where it's going to end. I mean, I know, there's just like you said with the homelessness, joblessness.
Mhm.
We are at a point, I think, in our history where some major changes do need to be made, and
Yes,
maybe that is one of them.
definitely a situation that has to be addressed immediately,
Yeah,
if not sooner.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
So, what is next for you, Susan? You're selling luxury real estate at the moment.
Yeah, I'm working. We have friends that lived across the street from us for many years. They have a real estate business, Lux Places International,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
they've been on me to work for them for a while. And so I just, while we were waiting for our house to be ready, I decided to take the study and take the real estate exam. And I thought if I pass it, I'll work. If I don't, I'll do something else. And I passed it. And so here I am.
So here you are.
But it's
But
fun.
oh, I'm sure, and you're meeting a lot of great folks, I'm sure.
Right, who are not in a crisis. The only thing that's got their stomach acid churning is that they're spending a lot of money on a house, and maybe it's the first time they've ever done that. So that to me is very manageable.
And you're selling only in the Mendocino and Sonoma County, is that correct?
That's my main focus, but I can sell or help someone buy in any county. I mean, I'm licensed for the state of California.
Good for you. It's
Yeah,
always good to have a new challenge, isn't it?
it is. I mean, they say as you age, you should learn new things, and why
Uh,
not?
and that's why I decided to do this. We're new in this community, don't know anyone, and it's difficult to get to know anyone in a pandemic. And I'm all for supporting other women. I think we need to do that. And even more so as you get older, you have life experience,
Right.
you can contribute. So I was hoping to accomplish that with this channel.
I
And
think
this,
it's going to be great.
I hope so too. And I'm really looking forward to it. And I've really enjoyed speaking with you today, Susan. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank
Uh,
you, Linda.